Well, good morning. Good morning. Let me add my welcome to those who have already received into this new year. To those of you who are new to this community, to those of you returning to this community from a time of absence and returning to new ventures with us, short or long, to those of you returning to or who have not yet left the community but have come to begin a new year. Welcome. It is a delight to be together. And as Dean Abraham has shared, there is such joy at the beginning of a new academic year. Many of the traditions of the world look at the planets as they move around and mark the beginning of things around this time of year, as harvest is celebrated across the world in different places where they begin for those preparations. So welcome to the fall class of 2024. Okay, sorry if you guys are online, we did a little poorly time here. Let's try it again. Welcome to the fall class of 2024. All right, that's good idea. Those of you who are guest with us, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Now you get a bit of a better sense of what PSR welcome feels like, looks like, and we get to create together. And so I invite you as we reflect together to keep it going, because I need some love as we share in the Word today. But I too want to express my appreciation again, to add my appreciation and thanks to the whole faculty and staff for the preparation to this, from those in admissions who began conversations with new students, to those in the Office of Academic Affairs that have been preparing and planning for them, faculty preparing every detail of courses and syllabus and planning for those events, to the facilities that have been paying great attention to how to create a hybrid community. Know that our space is being prepared both physically here and online, sometimes with a little tricky bumps. One of them being that our speakers blew out last week. So we have temporary speakers, in case you're wondering why this sounds a little teeny in the room. But it is great to begin together and to gather together. If you would please join me in a word of prayer as I reflect on our text for today. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, our God and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. So every fall, as the kids were growing up, I would usually sit them down to their sometimes consternation and do a little video. My wife and I would set it up. They sit in, on a little chair, and they talk about the upcoming year. We started doing this when they were very little, just starting school. And every fall, we would do a little recording of what they were looking forward to, what they were worried about, to be able to remember those. I just texted both of my kids yesterday one of those videos from when they started middle school and high school as they begin a new year. And as I was doing that, I remembered the one when my son started kindergarten. And David, who is now a senior at Howard University in DC, sat in the little chair, and I asked him what he thought kindergarten would be like. And he talked about it. But he said, kindergarten is going to be a lot of hard work. Kindergarten is going to be a lot of hard work. Well, folks, like kindergarten, this fall is going to be a lot of hard work. It will be hard work academically, either because you are preparing to graduate and this is your last year, and you're trying to make sure you get everything you can from the learning of this community for the things you can hear together. Academically, to those of you beginning perhaps after a long absence from educational programs like these or never having been to them, and you will learn new languages of different disciplines, be challenged to think in challenging ways and different ways about the things you care deeply about. It will be a lot of hard work. It will be a lot of hard work socially for each of us personally to accommodate our family times, our schedules, our work, to navigate all the things that it means to dedicate ourselves as a community to the sacred task of learning together. It's going to be a lot of work for us as a society, as a community, in our political life this fall. 60% of the world's population are in the process or have already elected leaders this year. Let me repeat that. 60% of the world's population this year has elected or will be electing a new president in 2024. The sheer level of transition in leadership, the demands of this moment of leadership politically are great. And we feel the kind of polarization of different views of the world competing with one another for what that future should look like. To how we engage a world with lots of change, but also lots of possibilities. And how to engage that with clear awareness, but also with joyfulness and possibility. It's going to be a lot of hard work. A reading from Joshua today reminds the people who are about to cross the Jordan that this thing across the Jordan is going to be a lot of hard work. You can tell because several times in the text, they are told to be bold and courageous. Repeated. You have to pay attention when people keep telling you something over and over again. Be bold and courageous, or at the beginning of the reading again, it picks up and says, be very bold and courageous. Now, anytime you notice that a few verses are skipped in a reading, pay attention, because probably something is being avoided. And I do encourage you, if you haven't, to spend some time with these texts and to acknowledge that they are deeply problematic in many ways, in the way that they are interpreted and in the way that they have come to us. This is the story of a people who have been wandering in the desert, having escaped slavery, searching for a place they can call home. But in their claim of that place that they want to call home, they displace others. They take over the land of other people. They disrupt their cultures, their lives, as we have acknowledged time and again when we gather to remember that in this land, some people were displaced who had stewarded in order for us to attempt our lives to be meaningful. In this community of learning, we wrestle with these texts and we are appreciative of them, of the way they have inspired generations of people who have known slavery, literally, figuratively, emotionally, politically, seeking freedom and hope. And we celebrate the way these sacred texts and many others give us stories to claim, to narrate, to inspire. But we also, in this community, engage those texts with a critical eye to the ways in which these texts and their stories may be deeply problematic. These texts of Joshua, of Kings, of Judges, are texts that sit at how to interpret that event of a displaced people seeking freedom and their settling or conquest of the land. Within the text, there are competing visions in the very sacred text itself as to whether this required the complete annihilation of everything that was in that place, or the ability to learn to live with those who are different from us. And that is a constant tug within the scriptures, in our political lives, in our global realities. These narratives have shaped the way and inspired colonies, and the colonization of many of the communities we come from. And they certainly have shaped and continue to shape our understanding of the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine. And so how do we engage these texts, these stories, responsible, faithfully, as we come to them? So with that acknowledgement of the troubling nature of this, the way that we do that and the way that Joshua encourages the people to do, because even though the book of Joshua tells the story in some problematic ways, within it is its own critique. Only be strong and very courageous. Remember, that's code for it's going to be a lot of hard work. Being careful to act in accordance with all the law that my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left. You heard that? Any ideas or resonances? Do not turn to the right or to the left. So that you may be successful wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to act in accordance with all that is written in it. In this place, we are an academic institution, but also a community of formation. We take the sacred texts of various communities, those of the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, and others, seriously, because we know that we must tend to these. And as the people, the Hebrew people begin to cross the Jordan and do a lot of hard work, they are encouraged to pay attention to the stories, the narratives, and the law that they were given. That law was to be the corrective about how, having meandered in the desert, they would form a new community and how they could be guided. It is the wrestling of most of our communities that has laws to interpret them, to understand them, and to figure out ways to live. At its best, politics, which I think our professor of political theology would agree, is wrestling with how we live together, how we live out of these laws. Dean Abraham wrote a piece in New Ways Ministry that was released this Sunday on the text for this week, where she articulates the importance of how we engage with these laws. So the people are about to enter the land, do a lot of hard work, and they are directed to do so in keeping with what they have been commanded. That this is what will guide them so that they can have, as a community, a life that is prosperous and good. In Abraham warns that observing and implementing the law is critical for the relationship between God and human beings. But observing and implementing the law can also degenerate into mere legalism and formalism. In the Jewish tradition, she goes on to say, the law is the articulation of a covenant of faithfulness between God and Israel. It implies a commitment to relationship, to accountability, and to justice. It means that the law is not only about figuring out who's right and who's wrong, but ultimately a means by which we seek relationship of accountability and justice to one another. So as we prepare to enter this new year, as we prepare to do the hard work that lies ahead of us, both academically and socially, but also politically, may we be guided by that directive to pay attention, to be intentional in how we read the texts, the stories, the people, the context in which we are called to reflect. My kids are facing different challenges today than when they started kindergarten. As I said, my son is beginning his senior year at Howard University in Washington, D.C. My youngest, Margaret, in about 2 hours, we'll be heading to, or about 45 minutes, we'll be heading to the airport to go spend a year in Spain, studying abroad at the age of 19. They are going to be facing a lot of hard work in new ways. At this time of year, many people are beginning, like we are, new journeys of learning. And I don't know if you know this, but the reason we begin the school year in this odd way, when I was growing up, the school year began in January. Makes perfect sense, right? New year, you begin in January. And you can do that when you live in a place where there's no changes in seasons all year round, because it doesn't really matter, right? But in the northern hemisphere, harvest marks the beginning of the school year. In fact, our school year was structured so that people could have completed the harvest before they would attend to education. Because the labor of people, including young people, was needed to be able to bring in those harvests. So I think it is important both for practical reasons, but also symbolic reasons, to pay attention to this moment of harvest. See, as Joshua prepares to invite the people into the crossing the Jordan, They were going to move from the flittering between different things, moving around by night and day throughout the desert to actually settle somewhere, to make deep commitments to a particular place. Their dream and the goal, like it is for most of us, is articulated in Isaiah, where he says they will build houses and dwell in them, they will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. It is easy to miss how significant this is if you have not been deeply displaced. If you do not know what it is like to know that what you plant today will grow and that a day will come where you will be able to eat the fruit of that which you plant. It requires a very different sense of place, of possibility, of stability, of dedication. So as we gather in this place, at a time of harvest, what are the seeds that you are bringing? What are the seeds that you will tend and nourish and commit to so that they one day will bear fruit in your life, in the lives of your community? For those of you who have been employed at PSR, you know that at some point in the interview conversation, I will ask you to share with me, what is your community of accountability? On whose behalf do you do your work? So think about the seeds you bring and think about the people on whose behalf you do your studying, your teaching, your exploration, your anticipation of the work before you. Because hard work requires that level of commitment and intentionality. As we enter into the hard work of this semester, we have prepared ourselves as a community to learn together, but the work remains ahead, and every one of us will contribute to it and help to shape it. In addition to what you will have in your classes, we have prepared to have discussions about disruptive artificial intelligence, Christian nationalism, and democracy. Pay attention to the invitation to be part of those conversations. We are discussing how we will queer the vote this fall in the work of CLGS. The work of the Badè Museum will invite us to think about migration, borderlands, and social boundaries in antiquity. And the launch of our platform, Quare, will ask us to put our why to work. We have much ahead of us, but this, like a harvest, can be joyful work. It can be hard, but joyful. Be attentive to the celebrations you see around you this fall as things begin, as the plants begin to bear fruit around us and harvest takes place. And be attentive to the long term and the people on whose behalf you do your work. And know that in this place, we are called to celebrate, to be bold, and to be courageous. Amen. Amen.